All right, Dad, today is Friday, July 19th. And let's start with, have you changed your position on the Trump assassination conspiracy? Do you still believe it's incompetence or are you
I
moving?
still believe it's incompetence. I mean, there's more I hear about it, just the more stunning this incompetence is. I guess some people would say that that's further proof that it just can't be. They can't be that incompetent, right?
Right.
Like, well, yeah. Another thing I heard, I think I'd heard it earlier, but I heard it again, was that there were Secret Service guys over there at that building, from which the assassin fired, but they were inside the building. It
Yeah.
just strikes me
I
like that's got to be like just beyond stupid. It's like, okay, you got the inside secured, but so you just went up on the roof.
right. There's that interview with Cheadle, the head of the Secret Service, and she's like, "Well, because it was a sloped roof, which is a very, very gradual slope. That's not
Yeah,
an
right.
excuse
It's
at all."
nothing. Right.
She said, "So because of the safety concern, we decided to secure the building from the inside." It's like, well, that's not securing the building.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
The sniper's not going to be inside.
Yeah. Well, I think you may see the problem. I mean, this person is just clearly incompetent. Is not qualified to head this agency.
Well, I think she's just trying to save her own ass.
Yeah, but
because
I mean the way that she's trying to save her own ass also just reveals her own incompetence.
yeah,
I mean, a
because
real self-respecting person, somebody who knew anything about anything would not be making arguments like that.
Well, it's because she can't say, yeah, that I was trying to get Trump killed because that's what was going on, Dad. You have to. I don't know. The more I hear about it, the more I'm like, this is I don't believe there's incompetence.
I don't think that's ridiculous at all. I mean, because again, the hostility to Trump is really there, and they pulled the Russia hoax on him. The Biden laptop, those were clearly deep state, attacks on Trump, and so yeah, I think they are, they're out to get him. They are, and I think they are capable of violence, but I just don't see it here. I mean, the fact this guy walked across, hundreds of yards out in the open with his weapon, it just seems to me that that's just a little bit too open and sloppy, a kind of conspiracy. I mean, I find it hard to believe that even these people got together and said, okay, he'll just walk across the field and then we'll pretend not to see him,
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Did you watch any of the Republican National Convention?
I watched probably about half an hour of Trump's speech last night. I got a message that he was giving the speech, and about maybe 10, 15 minutes into it, I started listening, and it went on until it seemed to be going at least half an hour, like maybe 40 minutes or more, and until I couldn't. Frankly, I started to get kind of bored, and then I stopped listening to it.
He's not a very good speaker.
Well, I'll say yes and no. I mean, the thing that I was struck by about that speech was just how comfortable he was with his audience. You had the sense like he really is like almost established kind of intimacy between himself and his audience. I mean, he knows how to communicate to those people. But it was rambling. I mean, there was just no structure. He started to think about this and that and whatever. And, sometimes it was kind of funny. The guy's an entertainer. Sometimes, he actually made some valid points in there. There was a lot of just ridiculous boasting, which you always hear from him. And then some things were completely absurd, like when he was talking about Iran.
Are you feeling more optimistic now about Trump and just the potential of the Trump administration, or are you still? You've always been taking this position that you can't trust him at all, and
Yeah.
he's.
Well, it's not so much that I don't trust him. I don't think he's got any kind of like he's deliberately trying to deceive us. I think the guy is an open book. He just says what he thinks at the moment, but he'll think something different the next moment. That's the problem. And, unless he's got the discipline, or maybe he just, let's say if the right people are in his, what do you call it? Like the selection committee. Yeah. You want to put people in charge of finding, your top picks for the agencies. Right. And if he if those people really do believe in Trumpism, which I think overall, is actually a healthy phenomenon, a move in the right direction. If they share his general vision, which I think we know what it is, maybe they really will find the right people, and then something will happen. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a repeat of the first term. We're going to have just the usual swamp creatures in charge. Nothing will change. Sometimes Trump will say things that make sense or whatever. He'll even maybe issue some orders to do something, but it just won't go anywhere because right. These people staffing the agencies are against him, and they'll make sure to sabotage anything he does.
But don't you think that after 8 years of being attacked by the state and the deep state, the neocons and the Democrats, it's not a partisan thing. It's the establishment thing, right? Uh-huh. He came in, big businessman, TV star. He thinks he knows what's up, but he just assumes that I need to hire the best for the job. Or who's been, dealing with, you get John Bolton, or you get, this is what he thinks, right? And if you just look at just the list of conservative Republican vice presidents, he had Dick Cheney, he gets Mike Pence, all of they're all neocons. They're all and he fills his cabinet with these types of people. Mike Pompeo, and if he picks somebody like Nikki Haley as his VP, right? Or Tom Cotton.
Well, Nikki Haley as his UN representative the first time around.
Mm-hmm. Right. So he surrounded himself with these horrible people.
Right.
And you don't think that now he's kind of realized a bit, because it does sound like he does seem to be a person that wants to engage in diplomacy. He seems to love diplomacy. Even when he talks about China, J.D. Vance is quite hawkish towards China. He's hawkish towards China. But the way that he talks about China is more of an economic battlefield rather than a military one, which is what the neocons are always pushing for. So I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but just after my impression of the RNC is that we are seeing the birth of a new conservative movement, the America First movement, which is a clear rejection of neoconservatism, which has dominated politics. And I think the fact that he picked J.D. Vance as his VP is a very good sign. So let's see what he fills his cabinet with. If Mike Pompeo's back in there, if John Bolton's back there, if Nikki Haley's back in there, Tom Cotton's back there, Lindsey Graham's up there, then it has it. But I am seeing him talk to a lot of people that I respect, like the person that introduced him. I'm a big fan of Dana White. I don't know if you know much about him.
Actually, I don't know.
He's a really impressive individual. I recommend you listen to him a bit. And he's somebody that's just not beholden to anybody. He just, and so I have a lot of respect for him. And like we said before, the guys that listen to the Duran, I'm forgetting his name now.
David Sachs.
David Sachs, right? Is his ear. It seems like he is a bit. He's aware, and because John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, they are the Mike Pence type of people. Mike Pence, right? Like Mike Pence didn't even show up at the RNC. It's clear that he has rejected. I think that he's rejecting these neoconservatives.
Right. Well, I think it's personal between him and Mike Pence at this point. And I think the reason he chose Mike Pence the first time around is that he felt like he had to nail down the establishment vote. I mean, the establishment was against him, and Mike Pence was he purposely chose somebody who was bland and establishment, right? to reassure those people. But he feels like, maybe, things have changed now. And
the people that I'm seeing speak, you do get a few of these neocons. And of course, we talk about this all the time, the position on Israel, the hawkish position on Iran.
Right.
But
that's very unfortunate.
I understand that, Biden isn't good on this either. He's getting the nickname Genocide Joe. RFK is terrible at this as well. He said the Palestinians are the most pampered people. So it's a lost cause. Yeah. And I feel when we looking at presidential candidates when it comes to Israel, Palestine, but maybe, Trump does seem to be somebody that doesn't like killing, and he doesn't seem to, he also expressed he doesn't like sanctions. Of course he did do, he killed Soleimani, I know he did these horrible things, but I don't know. Maybe maybe I got swept up when Hulk Hogan ripped his shirt off at the RNC. That
Yeah,
made
I
me like,
lost
all
it
right,
at that point too.
it got me pumped. It was a wild convention. It was
That's
it was
a little
way.
bit embarrassing. I'm sorry, but it
I
just
don't know. I thought it was funny.
that was right out of Idiocracy.
Yeah. I thought it was.
It was
great.
funny, but it was, I mean, a serious country shouldn't be doing this.
Well, it's
I mean, it's already so ridiculous. Why not have fun, right?
Yeah, that's kind of the atmosphere I felt overall. Is that obviously with the disaster of the Biden debate and then everything, and then Trump surviving this assassination attempt. Yeah. There's just this new energy that's been really invigorated into the RNC, and you could kind of feel it. And it just, as opposed to what we're seeing happen on the Democratic side, where they were talking about doing a virtual nomination, like get them on Zoom. That's going to be exciting, So it's
it's quite a contrast, I have to admit. I would just say that. I've seen those hopeful signs. I just remain cynical. I've been disappointed so many times in the past. I'll just give you one example. It's like even George W. Bush said that we need a humbler foreign policy. That was one thing that he, we can't be, the idea is that we can't be the place.
But he had Dick Cheney as his VP,
Right. But anyway, it's just that even if you had somebody who is very competent, very experienced in politics, very well connected and committed, it would be a gargantuan task, to overcome the blob, which they call this larger military industrial complex. It would be a gargantuan task. And so first of all, I'm not really sure how committed Trump is to anything. I know he says a lot of things, from time to time he'll say things that I do really like. And I think he is at least somewhat aware of, of reality. But I don't know that he has the commitment or the skills to really overcome the blob. It would be a difficult fight with even the best, the most skilled opponent on the other side. But maybe again, it really comes down to those first few appointments. I think we'll know then if there's really a fighting chance.
Right. Well, and not even just talking about just what Trump might do during his administration. I'm just talking about sort of the birth of a new conservatism within the United States. That is something completely different than what I think people think about when they think of the Republican Party and conservatives.
I think a lot of people are still living in the past. I mean, it's become a working class party, actually.
Exactly.
A lot of liberals really haven't gotten their minds wrapped around that yet.
Right. It's like what I said, that on our last podcast, that I felt a lot of it just felt like it was like the progressives of the 60s and 70s, just talking about the American dream and, the party of peace. J.D. Vance is saying, we don't want to send our sons and daughters to fight these foreign wars, and so it's a different party now.
I think it really is. I mean, though you do have I think you still have a lot of empty suits that are just committed to corporate interests.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure.
But you find them in both parties, to be honest. But there's a large chunk of the Republican Party that's just that. They really don't have any principles. They're just interested in, pleasing their corporate sponsors. But there is a new wing of the party that's different and, represented by people like J.D. Vance.
Right. These are not establishment neocons. So I think that people need to realize that the Republican Party isn't what it was when I was a teenager, during the Bush era, or, this is something new, and I can get behind it a little bit more than, I think for a lot of us for so long, especially, and people that are more anti-war like you and I have felt pretty partyless for a while. It's just like, I'm not really happy with any of these guys. But now I'm seeing it, but there's a hunger for it in this country. And that's why I think it's doing so well. And, I hope people can get beyond the labels, because it's just it's like a football game. People just get on their side, team blue, team red, right? And they don't think about anything beyond that, thinking about actual, real policies that affect. And I think one thing that everybody should get behind is like, hey, let's just stop, killing people, funding, sending money and military equipment around the world for things that we don't really understand. Like,
that's
people that support things like Ukraine or whatever. It's like, tell me about Ukraine. Can you tell me the 4 eastern provinces that broke? Can you tell me about the referendum? Can you tell me who was overthrown in 2014? Can you tell me anything?
Can you tell me what language they speak in eastern Ukraine? Can you tell me? No, they wouldn't know a thing, right?
Right.
Which country received the most refugees from Ukraine? Nobody would answer Russia, but that would be the correct answer.
Right. Yeah. No. So it's I'm hopeful. It was a wild. It was a weird convention. It wasn't anything like I expected. I turned on TV, Hulk Hogan ripping his shirt off, Kid Rock just going crazy on stage, and Dana White just injecting testosterone in everybody's veins. It was quite a spectacle. And then I started I found the Trump speech actually a bit boring.
I got bored with it after a while. I think he went on way too long.
He just kind of rambles, But one thing that you did say is true. He's very comfortable. He doesn't which makes him authentic. It's nothing he has is prepared. He just gets up there and he just, all right, let's just this is what's on my mind right now, and it's like you said, it's an open book. It just he's not nervous about anything. He's just like, wow, So interesting. So I am feeling a little bit more optimistic, but
okay. Well, I hope you're right.
I think like we were saying before, what we need to see is who he ends up, staffing. Who he puts in his cabinet. Do you have any idea when that happens? When does
Well, there's really no time limit on it. I mean, you can start doing it now, but normally you put together some sort of committee, to start recommending candidates for different positions, and so. In the not too distant, he hasn't been. It usually happens after he's actually elected, so it'll be some time, starting in after the November election. We'll start to get some sort of sense of which direction he's headed in.
Okay, well, hopefully he listens to people like David Sachs, Dana White, Vivek Ramaswamy, and those. Maybe get people like that into the party. All right, I'll just switch gears real quick. I don't know if you saw this. Did you see that the Houthis hit a building in Tel Aviv with a drone?
Yes, I did. Apparently it was just a few meters from the American consulate, right? Mm-hmm. And caused quite a bit of damage. I saw a video of it. It was a major explosion.
Yeah,
it wasn't just a
little
pop or anything. There was something. It was quite a significant strike. And apparently several people were injured, and I think one person was killed, a settler who served as a sniper in the IDF. And
a Belarusian.
Probably shouldn't say that, but it's hard for me to shed tears for somebody like that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's not exactly an innocent if it's a settler sniper. But yeah, it's pretty impressive that the Houthis sent a drone 1,400 miles away. Yemen is one of the poorest countries in the world.
Right.
And they're able to send one of their little drones 1,400 miles, and it was undetected. That couldn't be detected by Israelis' air defense systems, and struck the most populated, advanced city in Israel, Tel Aviv.
Right.
Like that. This is just an example that these drones are a real game changer, and I think people don't understand.
Right. Well, they demonstrated again, like the Iranians did earlier, that Israel's vulnerable. It was another reminder, and it's something. I mean, I think that's something that's it's penetrating the Israeli psyche, and with I think unknown consequences. I don't know how they're going to react to it. It's also a reminder of what they're going to face if they go to war against Hezbollah, because Hezbollah, is much more heavily armed than the Houthis are. That's my understanding. They have, quite an arsenal up there, and they're much closer. Right. I mean, this was from a great distance, and the Hezbollah is right across the border. So this had to take, an hour to get there or something. I'm not quite sure how long it took, but it would just be minutes for Hezbollah missiles and drones.
It probably took 5 hours for this drone, I would say.
Well, I think it was 5 hours for the ones from Iran. Yeah, so maybe this was like 3 or 4 hours or something. Yeah.
I mean, I'm waiting for something to pop off. But one thing that I feel that's interesting about this development with that Yemen, the Houthis were able to strike Israel, is that the Yemenis, the Houthis, they don't give a damn about like.
Yeah.
We need to be careful or whatever. They have nothing. They have been destroyed and bombed by Saudi Arabia with U.S.
Right. They don't really have
forever.
any infrastructure to lose. Right.
Right. They're like, we don't, exactly. They have nothing to lose, which makes them, they're like, whatever. We'll just keep, they're like, oh, we hit, it actually made it all the way over there. Well, let's just keep on sending more. What's going to stop them? There's no reason for them to have restraint. The U.S., the greatest military power in the world, the United States, came over to punish them and to stop what they're doing, and they failed miserably. So they're not scared.
Right. They spent months, bombing the Houthis, right? And at the end of those months, actually, even fewer ships were traveling through the Red Sea than before. So, I mean, that's just a very definition of failure. It was an abject failure on the part of the U.S. Navy. They lost. They were defeated by the Houthis. Let's be honest.
No, these drones are really they've kind of flipped the script when it comes to military power. It's like it's not easy just to have that dominance. I mean, we've talked about it before. You can have these drones that cost, $500, $1,000, $2,000, and then you would have to waste interceptor missiles that could cost millions to try to take them down.
Right. A Patriot interceptor costs $4 million, and you usually send 2 to strike a target. Right.
So it's like, that means, that it's just a different game. It's a different world that we're in now. And I think people haven't realized that the amount of money you spend on your military or the amount of tanks you have or helicopters is really irrelevant. It really is. Right. And now I feel like Yemen, if they did this once, don't you think they're going to keep on sending in drones into Tel Aviv or into Haifa or wherever?
I think this one was like it was an Iranian drone.
Maybe it was a modified.
I think maybe modified by the Houthis, right?
Samad 3 or something like that.
Right.
Jaffa or JFFA. I don't know what these things are.
Yeah, well, it's certainly true. Again, it's a reminder to the Israelis and the rest of the world of the vulnerability. One thing, clearly, Israel has lost something they had, which was just air dominance. In example, in previous wars with Hezbollah, Israel had air dominance. They completely ruled the skies. Hezbollah could not contest the skies. They fought very bravely and effectively on the ground and actually defeated Israeli ground forces, but they didn't have that air power. Now they do. They say, okay, maybe I'd say the Israelis are stronger. They have superiority, but they don't have dominance anymore. And that's a big difference. That really changes things.
I wouldn't even say they necessarily have superiority.
Yeah.
I mean, because...
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but let's say maybe they do, but they just don't, they clearly don't have the dominance. They just, that's gone.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that Israel could strike Yemen easily?
Well...
I mean, they couldn't strike Iran. The thing is, what's different is that Israel went all in, and the United States as well. They go in on aircraft. They're on the Air Force, but that's
right. It's
that
missiles
you bet on the
and
wrong
drones.
horse. It's drones, right? It's drones and missiles now. Right. It's not that you can't do a lot of damage with your F-16s and things if they can drop heavy payloads but they have a shorter range. You have to refuel them, and they're vulnerable to things like S-300s, S-400s. Right. Anti-aircraft.
They're very expensive.
Right, incredibly expensive, difficult to maintain. Require, obviously you have to train the pilots and all this stuff.
Right.
You can, like we were talking about. You mentioned that guy in Ukrainian, some 60-year-old man just in a little basement.
Right.
Piloting all these drones and dealing massive amounts of damage to the Russians.
Right.
That's the game now.
Yeah, you're right. He was holding up, a whole battalion or something for weeks until they found
by himself. Right.
Yeah, right.
So I don't think it's correct to say anymore that Israel even has superiority, military superiority. I mean, and neither does the United States. My opinion is who can never create the most drones, which means it's China. He's trying to create 90% of the world's commercial drones, which means it could turn those into military drones at a drop of a hat.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Well, so do you think that Yemen is going to start striking more into Israel if it succeeded once? Do you think they're going to keep going?
Yeah, there have been previous attempts. This is the first. I don't know if they didn't succeed in the past, or they didn't. I think they got through, but didn't inflict any kind of serious damage. Yeah, this is the first time that they inflicted serious damage. And maybe it's because they're using this new drone. If that's the case, I'm sure they're going to make every effort to acquire and manufacture more, and we'll see more of it. That'll just be another front, that Israel is going to have to deal with.
But how can Israel even counter? What are they going to do? What can they do?
Well,
Yemen?
I think they have threatened to strike Yemen. But of course, I mean, the U.S. has been striking Yemen for months, and it just hasn't done anything.
Yeah, Yemen doesn't care.
What are they going to strike?
Right. Yemen's been struck by the U.S. and Saudi Arabia for decades.
or many years.
Almost. How long has the Yemeni genocide war been going on?
Let's see. It started maybe around the time of the Syrian war. Yeah. I would say like around 2010, early 2010s.
Right. So they've been, you got teenagers that they've been like, yeah, this is my whole life. That's my whole right. So
right.
Yeah, we'll see. Here's another question then. Do you think that by the time Trump takes office, this Israel-Gaza conflict will be resolved, or do you think that it's going to be full blown? Like, where are we headed? It just keeps on.
I think we're headed in the same direction. I mean, Israel. You look at everything they've done; it's all pointing in one direction, and that is genocide. At the which maybe in its mildest form means ethnic cleansing, just pushing out those that they didn't kill, killing a minority, and then driving out the majority. Or just outright genocide. I mean, it's, we talked about that Lancet study that estimated the total number of deaths from the Israeli onslaught as 186,000, right? And that was maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago. It was based on, I think, maybe 35 or 36,000 direct deaths, right? Now, I know John Mearsheimer did a very good job of picking apart that study. And, he says it's a very good study, but it's really quite conservative, because first of all, it's based on the figures that the Gaza Health Ministry has been supplying. And people have noticed, like, the rate of increase has slowed down quite a bit in the last 3 months or so. And there's a very good reason for that. It's just that they just don't even have the apparatus to keep track of deaths. They don't have it. The way it used to do is like people would bring, injured family members to the hospital, and some of them would die, and their deaths would be recorded there. People would be brought to the morgue. These hospitals, a lot of them have just been completely obliterated. Others are just barely functioning. They just don't have the means of keeping track of the number of deaths. So the likely number, true total of direct deaths, again, people that have been killed by Israeli bullets and bombs is, he said 50,000. That's just an estimate, which would be, let's say, those people that haven't been recorded. Either nobody reported, the death to any authority, or because the body is under the rubble, one or the other. I think that's actually a very conservative estimate. Add an extra approximately 15,000, call it 50,000. And then you use they chose a multiplier of 4. And remember, it's 3 to 15, so they actually chose a very low multiplier. But even if we stick with that, so we're being very conservative, it could be quite a bit higher. It seems to me it ought to be higher in these circumstances, because there's been a deliberate effort, more than an effort. The Israelis have deliberately been destroying civilian infrastructure, those things that make life possible in Gaza. So it seems to me you should be using a multiplier that's closer to 15. But even if we use the 4, we get 200,000. And then you add the 50,000 direct deaths, you get 250,000 total. That's as of like 6 weeks ago. So we're on track. So I think that's a very conservative, very reasonable estimate. We're on track to, something like 500,000, 1,000,000. If it continues for several more months, that's where we're going. I mean, and you say, this it really is. Sometimes, we get used to the word genocide, like, it's just, it's a term that's, I think, overused to describe, all kinds of conflicts and so forth. But I don't think it is here. I mean, we are talking about a literal genocide. It's happening right before us. And I think even a lot of us who are very, very critical of Israel really haven't let this sink in what's happening. They are just killing off the Gazans, and they're doing it. It hasn't really, I don't know that it's even slowed down. It's certainly going ahead. We're just not getting the coverage that we used to.
And the Houthis are the only people with the balls to do anything about it.
Yeah, right. So, as Mark Sleboda says, this is arguably the most moral army on the earth. And I agree with them. I mean, I just say this is a completely moral cause. It's not even, about just defending yourself or, pursuing your own interests. It's just say, these are our brothers and we're not going to let them die. And like when it all is over, what are people going to say? Talk about the enlightened West, or, it's going to be these medieval wild men in Yemen who were the most moral people. The only ones who really did anything.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, if Israel, decides to go into Lebanon, or I feel like they're getting
and
more
it still
desperate.
appears that that's what they're going to do. I mean, it is heating. It's not like it's not a full-fledged war yet, but things have been heating up, steadily over the last couple of weeks. Increasing exchanges of fire. And again, it's not like before. Yeah, the Israelis have been hitting a lot of targets, assassinating Hezbollah commanders, and frankly, destroying a lot of homes, and also hitting military targets on the Lebanese side of the border. But the Hezbollah can strike back, and they have been hitting targets, both civilian and military, within Israel, and sometimes doing extensive damage.
So you think it's going to pop off pretty soon?
I think so. I mean, it just seems to be heading that way. And then,
if it does, then Israel might, the situation that Donald Trump inherits, Israel might not be, there might not be much left, and it'll just further damage Biden. And then Israel, and then hopefully Trump. I don't. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't want to get too far ahead speculating. Yeah. Well, one thing that I was thinking that could potentially be helpful for the Palestinians is if Trump gets into office, then because the media and the left and the establishment hate Trump so much, all of a sudden they might start shining a spotlight on the atrocities that are occurring in Gaza and Palestine. Because right now we don't really. The left doesn't do it because
that happens. I mean, libertarians point this out actually, and I think quite justly again and again. They'll see it's just like let's say under a certain president, under a Democratic presidency, they find the Republicans are on their side and are anti-war. That's great. Then the Republican candidate gets elected, and all of a sudden there's this great flip-flop. All those Republicans who had thought were reliable allies and anti-war, well, it becomes their candidate's war, and it's therefore a good war. And, and then the Democrats all of a sudden remember that they're the anti-war party, and so they're going on marches again.
This is what's so frustrating about partisan politics. It's like, do you guys have no memory? You just... It's silly. I just so stupid that people just dig in like, oh, I'm always voting blue, voting like, even when their party has completely evolved and changed into something different.
Right.
It's like, don't you have any core principles and values that can you think for yourself and say that you're against war? You say that you want peace, then how are you supporting this? And as soon as Trump comes in, you're like, oh, now we want peace in the Middle East now. It's like, come on.
Right. Well, again, that's the thing.
Joe Biden started this war.
Right. There are a lot of things that, I kind of, when I was young, of course, I grew up in Berkeley. It was very leftist. And you could say I rebelled against that because there's a lot of stuff I didn't like. And I, rejected on principle. But then over time, I began to say, well, actually they were right about some things, and especially about war and about the deep state, the security state. But it was just around that time when I was discovering, hey, the leftists are right about that. The leftists did a big flip flop, and they all became defenders of the deep state and their wars.
Right. Same thing
but there's a principled left, that I do admire. But they are, people again like Max Blumenthal and
Matt Taibbi
Taibbi, right? Yeah, these guys. And so I have great respect for them, but they'll be the first to tell you that they're hated by their well, they just call them the liberals now, and they said they call them the liberals, but it's become a pejorative for them. I mean, these people that are just betrayed all their principles.
Right. Yeah. On so many things, like you said, you're talking about on war, but also stuff like big pharma or big business. Yeah. It's like you guys are now the party of big pharma, big business. And,
well, they are the part. I mean, the thing is, like, you look at it. Okay, there is some big business clearly on the side of Trump. I think that there's no question about it. But in the most recent elections, like for example in 2016, Hillary Clinton, had twice the donations that Trump had.
Wall Street loves her.
Yeah, it was Wall Street. That's right. I mean, it was Goldman Sachs and whatever. Almost all the money from Goldman Sachs went to that's been true in the last couple of elections. And this is not, again, this is not the old Democrats and Republicans. Some people are trying to pretend that that's still what it's all about.
Yeah,
there was a time when the Republicans could, relied on, corporate America. They were the party of business. And again, the Democrats were the party of labor. That has changed. It's just no longer true. Again, you did, one sign of that is you had the Teamster representative giving a speech which was kind of sounded, rather leftist flavored speech too. It wasn't like he was just praising Trump, but he was talking about the elites. It's a different world.
It's a different world, but you can't tell the Democrats that. You can't tell people with Trump derangement syndrome that, because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to believe it. But it's just like, I wish they would do some soul searching. Just look at your principles. Think about what you feel. What does it mean to be a liberal? What does it mean to be a Democrat to you? Do you believe in, in helping workers? Do you believe in peace? Do you believe in that there's a problem with big pharma and big corporations being married to the government? If you believe those things, then your party is part of that problem. Is that problem now? And you have to open your eyes and see it. But I think they're just so blinded by the hatred of Trump that they can't see it. We'll see what happens. Hopefully people will wake up. I'm really curious to see, who he puts in his cabinet and if we can have some real change. And I'll try not to get too excited. But like I said, Hulk Hogan.
Yeah,
he did something.
It reminds me. Okay, my granddaddy would always say that he was a self-described pessimist, and he said, well, the great thing about pessimism and being a pessimist is that you can only be pleasantly surprised. Right. It's like, okay, so
manage expectations. I understand.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think actually I'm not just being purposely pessimistic, just based on past experience. I'm being pessimistic because I've been disappointed so many times, and especially by Trump. But I would love to be pleasantly surprised.
Right. Yeah, no, my friend always had a good quote that said, happiness equals expectations minus reality.
Okay.
So don't keep your expectations too high, because reality will if it be reality may not be able to reach it. You won't be that happy. At the beginning of the podcast, you were talking about that Trump, his policies, his plans were pretty clear and laid out. We'll see who he fills in. Could you recap what you think his platform, his positions are? I think he said positions in the beginning. What is Trump's positions? Can you lay out the main his main platform? We'll say.
Okay, well, I say economic policy is basically kind of means protectionism to a certain extent, right? Protecting American industries, and actually, you have to say that there really isn't any talk of fiscal conservatism. And occasionally, it's like it's mentioned sort of reflexively, but it's not obviously a major concern. You're not going to expect to any kind of what do you call it? Not an aesthetic, but any kind of fiscal austerity from Trump. So kind of rather free spending, protectionist in economics, and then culturally, why don't we just say that it's just identifying with the working class of this country, and I think that's one reason why Trump is making he's got the white working class, clearly, but he's making major inroads into the black and Latino working class because he knows how to speak to them. And he doesn't have the same sort of ideological obsessions that a lot of people on the left do. To give you an example, I think this has been abandoned, but for a while it became de rigueur to refer to Latinos as Latinx, right? Which is absolutely no Latinos. Like, what the hell are you talking about? That's not any language. It's
not Spanish,
speak.
Right?
Right. I'm sorry, but it's just like, if you really care about the Latinos, you got to see it. It just shows actually how distant those people are from everyday Latinos. And it's just not the sort of thing that Trump would never do. He would sometimes maybe use a term or something that would somebody might consider insulting. But I think average Latinos, whatever, consider this guy is for real. He's just talking to me. He doesn't hate me. We talk kind of in a rough sort of way, and it's just not a big deal. I mean, he just sort of has a working class air about him. Now, it's funny because he's not at all. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, right? But he's able to communicate with these people. He just sort of has the personality. So that's just, let's say, rhetoric, but then culture. It's just like, okay, none of these transgender obsessions and whatever that I think is driving a lot of just ordinary people out of the Democratic Party. And then on foreign policy, it's just like, let's focus on America. Let's not start wars abroad. And I think that is actually a very popular position. I think across the spectrum, it's just the elite who has these obsessions with, against Russia and China. Especially with Russia. Yeah, so I think that's kind of, that's not a very detailed platform or anything, but that's sort of the general shape of things. And, very different from, past Republican administration. Before it used to be, it was about fiscal austerity, fiscal soundness, which personally I think is a good thing, unfortunately, but both parties have pretty much abandoned that, right? Mm-hmm. But the party of business, but really a big business, and the country club. That's what Republicans used to be about. But they no longer that party. Actually, country clubs and big business have gone to the Democrats. They really have. I mean, when you look at where donations are coming from and polling, you find people in those income categories and are largely Democrat voters.
Mm. Okay, well, let me just ask you one more question because I think I'm going to wrap it up and help my wife with the kids.
Okay.
Do you think Joe Biden is going to be the nominee, or do you think are they going to push him out?
Well, there are a lot of rumors that he may actually announce his withdrawal from the race in just a couple of days. And there are more and more people while it slowed down, maybe it was just because of the attempted assassination. Nobody said anything for a while. But then in the past couple of days, the tempo of defections of prominent Democrats asking Biden to withdraw has picked up again. You see a lot of. I think he's going to step down.
Mm. Okay, well, that'll be interesting. I mean, yeah. I don't want to be somebody that has to go against Trump right now, not after he dodged a bullet and. Right. I mean, just the Hulk pump that did it. That was I think that sealed the deal. Okay, Dad. I think we'll cut it a little bit short today because I think the kids are going a little crazy. So I gotta.
Sure. Yeah, I understand.
I gotta go get to it. All right. Thanks a lot, Dad.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. By the way, I'll just mention a couple of things.